So, hi everybody. I introduced myself to you before. I know pretty much all of you, but I'm Shelly, and I am the one who's kind of set up these tools for you guys. Because my job is to help you tell your story, and part of how you tell your story is by sharing information about your unit practice council on the intranet. So the metaphor I like to use is all of the stuff that we've been teaching you so far today is kind of like what's going on in the kitchen of your unit practice council. And you can run your kitchen however you want a kitchen. You want your chair to be your sous chef, you want it, you can do however you want. But once you get things out into the restaurant of Harborview, we have a few things that we need you to do, and we need them to be standardized because everybody's going to expect their meal on a plate. And you don't know who you're going to be serving at the Harborview restaurant. You have lots of different customers who want to know stuff about what's going on in your unit practice council. Darcy wants to know stuff. Random units on other units want to know stuff. Random units on other units, random nurses on other units want to know stuff. So we have to make sure that we make that information available. So the tool that we have to do that is our intranet, our lovely intranet. So does everybody have their web browser open to that? So I have to slag on our intranet just a little bit. It is a SharePoint 2010 intranet. So that means it's SharePoint, it's a Microsoft product, and it's 2010. It's old. It's from before the times where we had things like smartphones, where we wanted to make things mobile friendly. So some of the things that it wants to do, it really only wants to do at a Harborview machine, on a Harborview computer. You can try to do some of this stuff at home, feel free, but some of it may or may not work, and unfortunately we can't really tech support it for you. So, little caveat, but it does do the things that we want you to do here at Harborview just fine. So, you're going to want to use Internet Explorer. So see down here I have the Internet Explorer logo instead of Chrome. Since it's a Microsoft product, it plays a lot nicer on the Microsoft browser as opposed to the Google browser. So, has anybody run into issues with that before? Yeah. So, Internet Explorer. You'll notice that there's not really a link for it anywhere. There is for me because I have it on my links. So if you search for UPC and you click search, it is the first link that comes up is the Unit Practice Council site. So you're going to want to add this page to my links. I have it added so I don't have to click the link there, but once you click that, then it'll show up for you in this little list here. So that's a great place to put like your unit site, the Nurse Practice Council site. You notice I have a few other things in there. We have several tools that we've built to try to make this easier for you. So first off, the agendas and minutes, like Deb and Julie talked about at the beginning. The tools to make it easy to get to the templates are where you click your agendas and minutes. So let's click on that. And you can create a blank version of this by clicking on, well, let's start with agendas. It's better to start with agendas. I should flip those. So you can just click on that, and it'll ask to open up the template. And here you get a blank template. So it's going to ask you who you are, because it wants to make sure you're really who you are, because it wants to give you credit just the same way as your orders and stuff in Orca want to give credit to you. So that's why it's asking you again. So you can fill in some of the information that we need. So like if we were making an agenda for today, we'd schedule the meeting for today, and we'd change the unit practice council to whichever one we actually are. So the TBD is the fill-in for if we don't know yet. So meeting purpose, if you have a specific purpose to the meeting, we kind of say increase control over nursing practice at Harborview Medical Center as a default purpose. So the unit practice council, and the date and time and location. Those are all really important points to have on there. There's sort of some tips in here for how to arrange your agenda. We would definitely recommend you keep these default amounts of time for these pieces of standard pieces of the agenda. So that's 25 minutes. So if you have a 2-hour UPC meeting, that's actually an hour 50 minutes. You really only have like a little over an hour to play with your time. So be careful with how you divide that, and make sure you give yourself room to set up time for those topics correctly. And here's your little action item list. So it's really easy to copy the action item list from the prior minutes onto the agenda, so you can go through and see how those went from one meeting to another. I find that that's usually the easiest thing to do. And the other really easy thing to do that we do for the NPC, and some unit practice councils do this, set up your agenda when you're closing out your meeting before, as you're doing your minutes, because this is when you know that the topics are fresh in your mind and it's available, and it isn't when you're coming back to do your UPC work again a month later, oh wait, what were we doing? You already have it kind of as a guide for how you plan it out. You can update it and change it, but if you start with this, then you're good. So we have the upcoming meetings field that's filled in for a default time. You can update that to what yours is, as well as the where you want your correspondence to go. So that'll be your email address, or if you have a de-identified email for your unit practice council. I know that the TICU has the TSIT UPC chairs list, and we're working on maybe building some functions that would standardize some of that behavior in the future. And your attendee list, like Deb talked about, it's really important to get that on there so that it's clear and distinct.
This I found gets missed a lot, of who was in attendance on other UPCs. They're either just scratching it down on a piece of paper or it's not happening at all. And this is really, really important for a couple reasons. One is if we go back in, we can maybe support you, go, oh, the attendance is really low, I wonder why.
Now you notice a lot of these are blank, and it's kind of a pain to type that in all the time. So the easiest thing to do is just pull up an old one of your agendas. So like I'm going to pretend that I'm Katie right now and pull up 4 East. So I could just go up here and click Save As and change the date on this. It's going to ask me to update these. So, and I have all the stuff in there. So you can just save it. You don't always have to go back to the template. You can just resave a version. And the other great thing is, even if you save over something that you don't want, I'm not going to save that, you can always go back and get it. So you'll notice here there's the list of the UPC agendas and minutes. So there's 25 unit practice councils. That's kind of a lot. We want to make sure that we have everybody saving things so that they don't get saved over. We have to be really careful that we update the name so that it always gives you a new name for each time. The way I want you to do that is the way that it's mostly been done here, of having it be the unit, either agenda or minutes, the year, month, and date. That's actually an ISO standard. It's something that records management really likes. And I like with the dashes because it's easier to see. You don't want to put spaces because that's sometimes what makes the hyperlinks break in your emails. So don't put spaces in the names. But make it like this. If you just say agenda, it could be anybody's. But the great thing is, this doesn't mean that we've lost this version of the agenda. So we could just go back and open that up. We know it's the NICU. And I don't know the date and time. But I can save at. Ooh, and I even put spaces. So I'm just changing the name on that, and it's going to go in there. So I can go back to this one, and I click Restore, and it's bringing that forward. So no matter what you do, you're not losing anything in here. And if you, by tracking this version history, you can go back and see prior versions and make changes. The document that's best for this, that where the virtue of this is really best seen, is your charter, because you'll always want to go back and see what were our prior versions. Those are all saved over. You're never going to lose anything from that. So you can just have your, 8 East charter. If you need to go back and see what a prior version was, you just use that version history function. Your home computer, if you have a Mac, and if you weren't signed into the intranet at the time, and if you were using Google Chrome, it doesn't have the SharePoint Foundations piece in it where it'll make that work readily. So that's one of the downsides, is that this is kind of something that you have to do while at work. You can work on some of these documents when you're at home or other places, but you might need to do this function at work. And you also want to try to do it when you're on a blue screen and not a purple screen. If you notice on the intranet, you see my name up there, Michelle, legal name, not what I actually go by. But so that means that I'm signed in as me. When you're on a purple screen, it says ED kiosk in there, so the internet doesn't know that you're you, and it isn't giving you access to those spaces. So we find people have issues with getting it to do what we want it to do. So a blue screen will usually work best for you, or once you guys get into the tap in, tap out, it'll always be like it's a blue screen for you, so it should always work then. And if you want to just look at you have a couple of options here. You can just pick which unit practice council you want to look at, and it'll limit that information. Or you can just use this little filter. That's fun. And then there's a link for back to main UPC page if you're done with agendas and minutes. So there's the calendar, and we're hoping that we can get you guys to document all of when your meetings are on here. Because with 25 UPCs, it's hard to know who's going where when. We want your advisor to know where and when you're going to be. So you can either edit your UPC's meeting. So like here's 4 East's meeting, and this is just running into the perpetuity. So this is a recurring event that we put in forever ago. So if you guys ever change the date that you were going to be having your meeting, you would want to click on Edit Series, which is editing all of the unit practice council meetings you have, and stop it. So end by, oh, this is the last day we're going to meet on the 3rd Friday, and click Save. If you just wanted to edit the one time, you were just going to edit, oh, on this meeting we're actually going to meet, we're going to meet until noon because we're going to talk about other stuff. You just have to click on the one event and click Save. Has anybody messed around with this before? Have you played with this at all? And this is another thing where you can't really, even if you mess it up, we can go back and fix it. So don't feel uncomfortable about that. The only thing that I would ask you to not do is, if you do change, I want you to not edit the series and edit every item. Like if you were going to change the date and you were going to be like, oh, we're not on the 2nd Monday, we're the 4th Monday now. Make sure that you end it and you start a new series instead of just editing this one. So that because this will be like historically everything. You were always on the 4th Monday. That's not what we want. We want to know through this date you were on the 2nd. So yeah, make a repeating event. So then we'd say, okay, we're going to start on this date, and that's going to be no end date. Or a lot of them, when I put them in myself, I put them in for a year, just because, or like the range that you know that you're chair and you know that you have the broom booked, to make sure that that's a ping for you of like, oh yeah, we need to do this again. This is not the same thing as having the room booked. The room booked is an entirely different system. So you're going to want to talk to your manager or your advisor about getting help with making sure that that's happening, because it's a different thing. This is just letting people know. This is just putting it up on the menu. This is part of the menu in the restaurant, as it were. And contacts. So here is who all the chair leaders for the Unit Practice Council, to the best of my knowledge, are. Some of you guys aren't on there, like Siobhan and Bree. I just sent you emails today because I didn't have your information for your unit. So how do we fix this? We're going to click Edit Item. So Siobhan, you're the chair-elect, right? And you can edit this too. BC. Ooh, you do have your, okay. I don't have everybody's credentials memorized. I did just do the Indian Kira email. So you can put that information in there. One of the things we're trying to start tracking a little better is what goals are people working on. So you see here there's 2 fields for goals. If you could update your goal information there when you change your goal, that'd be great. And just click Save. So this is a way. I'm going to build a view. You see right now, we don't really have a good view that shows that, but if I click on contacts, you see there's a lot more information in here, and we can show it different ways to show different pieces. Right now, all I'm asking of you is just to make sure that the right person's contact information is on there. So when you step down, make sure you know, make sure you let me know, make sure your advisor knows. If a new person's elected, make sure we know, because we have a lot of little pieces that we have to make sure work, to make sure you're on the right email addresses and all that kind of stuff. So, and we're going to hopefully make a way of making it so this information is easier for you guys to see. So if we knew that 8 people were working on the silts projects, would be a little bit easier to get them in a room together talking about how that would be streamlined. So right now, unless people put the information in, that's not really a good way for us to all have that. There's the resources, the project resource guide, practice council resource guide that Sneva talked about, that has the list of, if you're working on this kind of project, who you want to talk to. That stuff is here under resources. And then there's a link to the NCIC's page. The Nursing Clinical Inquiry Council, which is one of the places that as you're working on a project, they'll really help you with getting the information that you need. Project sharing, I'm still working on that, sorry. And training will have more, it's kind of more the tech training sort of things. And we may get some of the information from Deb and Julie on there, or it'll probably be in the project curriculum area, which is what Matt and Rebecca are going to talk to you more about. Reflections, also, we have a little library for reflections in here of what people have done, reflections in the past. And you could add your own in there, and you just have to click I don't have one loaded that you could like edit the properties for. But it'll just ask you a few questions about what the properties on the document are if you tell if it's reflection, and it'll just give you some little bits. So then everybody could use your little picture and your little quote.
So it doesn't have to be hard to find a reflection, guys.
There's a little library there for them. And you can just put a link to them on, like, let's say I was going to put this on, so I just copy the shortcut, and now I'm going to go to my agenda, my fake agenda for Fort East that I made. So I click the text that I want to make a hyperlink, and I insert hyperlink. It's going to ask me who I am because it really wants to make sure that I'm not messing something up. And I just paste. And so then when it comes time for the meeting, all I have to do is click on that and I can see my reflection. If you don't save over your prior version of your minutes or your agendas, you can also use the copy paste function to move stuff over. So if we wanted to copy over their action item list from their minutes to their agenda, I would just float over this content. So and then I click copy, go back over to my agenda, and I click paste. And it'll give me a few different options for how I paste it, so I can test and see which one works, that does what I want. And it looks like I want a merge table. So you can see, you could have your action items. You don't have to type it all twice, you just copy paste. And so I would love to show you more information that you need and help you get set up on this if you need it. I've set this up so you can't delete things in here, so just go around and play with it. Just do what you can do.
Thanks, Shelley. Today's workshop, you've learned about how to plan a meeting, how to run a meeting, how to take a record of the meeting and post it on the intranet. So we've done a lot of talking about how to run the UPC meetings, but not as much about the work that you do in your UPC meetings. So with the last 30 minutes that we have, I'm going to just cover how to do improvement projects. Sound good? Good? Okay, cool. So we know that working on improvement projects is new to most nurses who are coming from direct care roles, but that we also know that the reason why we want you to be doing improvement work is that you're in a better position to know what needs to be happening on your units to improve. So how do we get you the skills and teach you how to drive improvement and still keep you embedded on your units where you know what's happening? We have here, it's an improvement framework, and it's basically a map that takes you from the beginning of forming your team and just starting to think about project ideas all the way through rollout and sharing your work at the end. And I think that the most important thing that came about after we put this framework out, and I'll talk about the origins in just a second, is that improvement work takes a long time. Most of it involves the planning phases because project launch is here on our map. So to alleviate some of our initial concerns that we're not moving fast enough, we're not achieving our goals fast enough, we want the bulk of our work to be in the planning phases because that's really where sustainability grows out of. I'll hear people tell me a lot of times, I really need to know more about how to make a project sustainable. My two biggest tips for sustainability are involve everyone at every level, so engaging people at the bedside, and that's you, and to plan thoroughly and try to address as many of the problems before you actually go live. So the biggest part of sustainability is doing all of this work right up front. About a year and a half ago, it was in the summer of 2017, the Nursing Practice Council in one of their meetings started asking questions about what do other shared governance groups at other hospitals do? How do other shared governance groups function? How do they do improvement work? And part of what came out of those questions that the NPC was asking was the workshop that we're doing today, because we wanted to know more how do we train UPC leaders, and so that came out of that question, but also the framework came out of that question because you guys were saying we don't know how to do project work, we need help. So this came out of AACN. AACN has the CSI Academy, which is a new program that they piloted a couple years ago, and they basically took groups of bedside nurses and put them through a 16-month program to help them do improvement projects. And I was one of the lucky nurses that got to be part of that program, and we did an improvement project in the neuro ICU. But that's when I kind of got these tools to help do improvement work, and we just put them in this map, and we incorporated our professional practice model as the compass of our map. So you can use this to, say, define the characteristics of the things that unit practice councils do. When we form teams, we are professionally developing ourselves and each other. When we share our projects, we're professionally developing ourselves and each other. When we brainstorm and start to define what kind of improvement work we might be doing, we're exploring a culture of inquiry. And then we move into exemplary professional practice as we really start to plan our project and collaborate on it. And I might be getting a little bit theoretical, but it's just another way of how do we tie our mission as nurses at Harborview into what we're doing on the unit practice council level. So that's just kind of the theory of the project, and then it's broken really into project determination, project development, and project support across the top, because here it's really important when you start brainstorming a project idea that you think about what's the problem I'm solving and not the solution that I think that I need right from the get-go. So you don't want to know what your project yet is. You want to think about the questions that you're asking. What's the problem on your unit? It's not that sleep initiative that the burn ICU is doing to remove giving medications in the middle of the night. The source of the problem was the delirium that they were seeing, and that led them to poor sleep and then to the sleep intervention that fits the problem. So the framework gets you focused on problems and then solutions, we've started to build in, thanks to Shelley. She's really making that SharePoint 10 site work harder than possible, I think, by linking these here. You can click on the different phases, and that actually takes you into the resources that support that phase. You guys are working on projects 2 hours a month. Matt and I are working on building this framework a little more than 2 hours a month, but not much more. So you'll notice that the early phases are really well built out, and the later phases don't have as much. I did tell you that sustainability really is in the planning, but hopefully we'll have more on this page than that in the long run. So our early phases are a lot more filled out, and there are some videos. Let's find one of the videos that we're starting to put in.
Hi, it's James Taylor here.
This is an external video.
Brainstorming sessions or brainstorming techniques to help.
And then we have some even internal videos that will require you to use a login. I chose one that wasn't me on purpose. Sorry, Matt.
Sorry.
So the videos are short. They're about 20 minutes long, and they delve into the topic a little bit more. The videos could be assigned before a unit practice council meeting so that you could use that content and discuss in the meeting, or they're supposed to be short enough that you could theoretically watch them in the meeting if you wanted to. So that gives you a resource to use with your groups. What questions do you guys have about the framework? Getting to the resources?
After it hits play, it'll play the video. Yeah.
Rebecca, what is that cyclical arrow signs above phase 1 and phase 7?
So I think the more I think about it, all of these phases kind of continue to happen, but it's really important to know that forming the team never stops.
Okay, that's right.
And that you may have you heard forming the team, norming, and then storming? These are normal cycles that often happen in project teams. So you form the team, you get together, you form some norms, and you agree how you'll behave. But most teams do go through a storming phase where they get a little bit out of line, or maybe they test the boundaries of their norms. And what comes after storming?
This has been studied in psychology. All groups, your UPCs are one of them, you form, you storm, you norm,
There you go.
and then you perform. And eventually you adjourn. So, although I like to sort of think of it more as transform.
Okay.
So, but like, you all go through that, and I talk through about that. There's evidence-based, and I have resources up there, how you guys as UPC leaders can actually, if you go to Tuckman Stages of Development there,
Okay, perfect.
that's a little handout I put on there, but it tells you what you can do as leaders when you know your UPCs may be storming, and how do I need to manage that versus maybe when we're forming or when we're performing, because there's things as chairs you're going to kind of want to do. So I talk about that in the video.
So the cycles just remind us that that we're always forming our teams, and also once we start a project, sustainability kind of goes on forever. So it's not a one and done. It's just a little bit of a nod to the fact that you don't plan sustainability. It's an action. It's something that you're kind of always doing. I think it's incredibly helpful for me as an advisor to have a shared mental model with my groups of where they're working. So when I talk to my unit practice council, it's really great for me to know where they are, and if they come to me and say, Rebecca, we're not sure if we're in brainstorming or defining, but we're really stuck on getting our question defined. I don't need to know specifically 2 or 3. They gave me a ballpark of where they're at. I kind of know a little bit more about what they might need help with. So as a point of conversation, it can be very helpful.
And it can help, I think it's very helpful as advisors. It can also, do you guys think that this could be helpful to you guys when you're planning an agenda for your meeting? To be thinking about where are we at, especially if you've got 2 goals. You might be in one phase in one project and another phase in another project, right? And that's okay, right? We found a lot of projects And this is very typical when you're starting to learn. A lot of people think we're a fast-paced institution, right? We're used to working in 12 hours and getting the stuff done and moving on. And this is different kinds of work. And a lot of people thought, we'll have 2 or 3 meetings. We already know what the solution is, but then they would get frustrated or things would sort of flounder. So I think this helps, reset expectations.
So it's I want as we wrap this up, I want you to know that this, just like the professional practice model, it's not a tool that belongs to clinical education. It's a tool that belongs to all of us. It's a tool that's growing and changing. And you may find things that you're like, Rebecca, this should be different, this should be better. I want to know about that. Matt and I really want to hear about how do we make this better, because this is a project of its own. We are approaching this as a project. You have the poster. I didn't want to waste our time today talking about this as a project, but I shared with you in the handouts the poster that we presented at NTI to present this work. So we are treating this as a formal project, and we're trying to measure your growth in evidence-based practice knowledge as our measurement. So we're going to measure and resurvey this winter, and we couldn't do it without you. So you're part of this project, whether you like it or not.
Do you guys remember that survey? It was right around December or whatever. I think we had about 51 UPC members fill it out, and it was asking you just about evidence-based questions. And after we've done this for a while and done this workshop with you guys, and probably around the first of the year, maybe early spring, something like that, right around there, we're going to resurvey and see, did this possibly make any difference, right?
And where do we need to go from there?
And where do we go?
Because we won't be
Exactly.
done. We have to then reassess where do we need to grow next. So we don't expect you to know everything you need to know about improvement work by January, and we don't expect this to be done by January. It's an evolving, ever-changing.
Our goal is that you sort of are being on the inside and the outside of a project, sort of seeing this too. So you're part of this, this is so, and it doesn't have to be all completely finished, that's the other thing. So, in fact, it's never finished, right?
Yeah, although I wish I could get some more of it finished. So.
Yeah.
I will. This meeting with you guys is re-inspiration for me to get back to a period of time. So your unit has been allotted some sort of FTE percentage as part of your budget for unit practice council work. One of my managers broke it down once, and I think they said something like, that's 12 nurses attending the meeting every month for 2 hours, or something like that. If some managers give project time for projects, and how they budget that out is totally up to them.
Okay, so it's individual.
It is very individual. That 2 hours a month is protected time at that percentage FTE rate. The Nursing Practice Council, your manager does not pay for out of the unit budget. The clinical education department pays for that. So any of the mid-level councils, Jelly, let me see if I can do it by myself.
It's a little varied, but
I think I can do it. No.
The big nursing
big
practice council,
no, to the left, down.
right there, right there.
That one.
Yeah.
I was so close.
She did.
So all of the squares are paid for by the units. All of the circles are paid for by clinical education. So if you need to go to a circle, it doesn't come out of your unit budget. It comes out of clinical education's budget, and there is a sheet that shows your manager how to budget that. And the truth is, managers often hear information, and I hear information from another source. The only way we'll ever figure out that we have different information is if you bring us together and tell us that we're not speaking the same language. So please let us know. Well, I want to give credit to you guys because it's you and your predecessors. The whole reason why we're having this workshop today is because unit practice council chairs said we need more training for this. And we got support to offer this to you, but would not have happened if you didn't ask for it. So really the credit is to you guys, and we'll continue to grow this. Who knows what it'll look like next year.